Welcome to Lockdown Minis. I'm Richard, and in this video I'm going to be showing you exactly how I paint my ultramarines. This does include using an airbrush, but if you don't have an airbrush, don't worry about it. I've also done exactly the same video with brush only, and I'll put a link to this in the video, but also in the notes below. So let's get to it. First of all, we're going to trim out the model using some clippers and just carefully cut this model out. Now I've got all the parts trimmed out, I'm going to be using a nail file and a blade just to get rid of any mold lines, but also any loose tags as well. I'll also be using my drill during this stage just to drill the barrel of the gun as well. To give the base some texture, I'm going to be using a textured paint by Tamiya, which is the dark earth soil effect. I'm going to start off by using the airbrush to prime the entire model in black. Secondly, I'm going to use the airbrush again to apply a nice even coat of ultramarine blue by Vallejo. Now we're going to move on to doing some highlights, and for this I'm going to be using electric blue by Vallejo. I'm going to be applying this where I think the light should be hitting the model, but I'm only going to be applying this from above the model, as you can see here. Now I've completed that, we're onto the brush. With this, we're going to start off by adding a shade of Drakenhof Nightshade. Now this is a 50-50 mix of Drakenhof and water, just so it's not as dark. And we're just going to use this to dull down some of the colours that we've used. I don't exactly know why I do it this way, but I prefer to just have brighter colours that I then dull down with a wash, and they all tie together better, I think. A lot of people will try and get that final colour without adding the shade, but I just think by adding the shade there as well, it just makes it that little bit better. With the shade now dried and the base of the armour looking the right shade of blue that we want, we're going to move on to black, and we're going to pick out all the areas of the model that's black, such as the belt, the rubber sort of tubing between the armour plates and on the wrist, and any areas where we've perhaps oversprayed with the airbrush earlier on the weapon. With the black complete, we're going to move on to the gold trim, and for this we're using Shining Gold by Vallejo, and we're going to apply this over the trim of the shoulder pads but also on the emblem on the chest. For the metallic areas of the model, such as the belt buckle and also some of the areas of the gun, like the barrel and the magazine, we're going to be using silver by Vallejo, and later on we'll go over this with some Nuln Oil. Now, for the biggest job on the model, is the hard edge highlighting. This is also the most time consuming, so take your time with this. Essentially we're just going to be catching all the edges with the side of our brush, just to leave a nice thin line and a nice highlight using Wolf Grey by Vallejo, just over all the edges and where all the armour panels meet. Now we're going to be using Nuln Oil just to go over all of the metallic areas of the model, such as everywhere we added the gold trim to, but also the belt buckle and parts of the gun. For the helmet lenses, I'm going to be using Bloody Red by Vallejo, and we're just going to be splodging a little bit of this into the lens as carefully as we can, and we'll come back to this to neaten it a little bit up with Nuln Oil later on. Also, while we've still got red on the brush, we're going to be using a little bit of Mephiston red just to go over the waxy seal of the purity seal. Continuing on with the purity seal, we're going to be using a Shabti bone just to fill in the piece of parchment. For his little screen on his scanner, I'm going to be using Mute Green by Citadel. We're just going to fill this in nice and neat, and then we're going to apply some Nuln Oil onto this, and then come back with the Mute Green just to add a few lines and dots to make it look like this is picking something up on that scanner. Now we're going to get the Nuln Oil back out. We're just going to go over the purity seal, the waxy part of the purity seal, and also over over some of the areas of the scanner. We'll also use a bit of this Nuln Oil and put it into the lenses on the helm. For the parchment on the purity seal, I'm going to be using Citadel's Seraphim Sepia just to darken that down, and we'll come back with a Shabti bone and highlight that once it's dry. For the base, we're going to be using a light brown to coat the entire base. And then once that's dry, we're going to be using two shades, which is Seraphim Sepia from Citadel and also Agrax Earth Shade. We're going to be applying the Sepia at the front of the base and the Agrax Earth Shade at the rear of the base, and then blending the two. If you want to see this process in a bit more detail, I have got a tutorial on exactly how to make these bases completely from start to finish. I'll put a link to this in the video, but also in the notes below. While I'm waiting for the brown to dry on the base, I'm just going to go back to the Purity Seal with some of Shabty Bone to add some highlights. Now that the parchment's complete and the brown on the base has dried, we're going to add the two shades to the base, which is Seraphim Sepia at the front of the base, and then to add a almost shadow effect to the rear, we're going to use an Agrax Earth Shade, and then we'll blend the two in the middle. To finish the base off, I'm just going to use standard black, and I'm going to go around the base nice and neat, just to make it look nice and crisp and fresh. Finally, I'm just going to add a little bit of foliage to the base. These are little tufts of grass by Army Painter, and I've just placed a little bit of super glue on there first, just to make sure that these don't come off. I'm also going to be applying some transfers, which is going to be the standard Ultramarine logo on one shoulder pad, and then the opposite shoulder pad just the unit marker. With the transfers in place and dry, I'm just going to go over these very quickly with a little bit of Nuln Oil with a nice thin coat, just to take off the white sheen that you get with these transfers when they go on. I just find that the white looks a little bit too new compared to the rest of the model. And there it is, the model's complete. I think my Ultramarines look really good with this colour scheme, and I've really enjoyed painting them. It's really quick and easy, and to get them battle ready like this to go on the tabletop. There's nothing flashy about these, they're just very basic, and there's some areas that I haven't even added extra colour to. But it got the job done, and when you're painting en masse, you can't really complain about that. If you've liked watching this video and you want to see more, or you want to see how how you paint these models with brush only, hit the subscribe button, and I'll put all the links in below. You can also find me on Instagram at lockdown_minis, so check me out on there. I'm always putting updates of my latest projects on there. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.